All right, joining me to continue this conversation is the spokesperson of the Bring Back Our Girls Advocacy Group. That's a group that has been campaigning for the return of the Chibok girls who were abducted in April of 2014. Of course, some of the girls have been released, but quite a number of them, about 113, still remain under the captive of Boko Haram. Sesu Akume now joins me from Abuja. Sesu, thank you very much for joining us on the program. Let me get, what exactly is the take of your group now on the proposed plan by the government to give Boko Haram, repentant Boko Haram members amnesty?
What if we're going to ask us, we'll say that the government should think about what they're doing first before taking a step. So for now, we would say granting Boko Haram a wholesale amnesty now is a hurried process. It's a process that is not well thought out, and there's so many questions to answer, and so it's not a good thing to engage in at this time.
But it's not as if the government has actually made a conclusion on it. I mean, the government is just a proposal that the government has said, well, if the Boko Haram insurgents were willing to lay down their arms, they would be granted amnesty. And in any case, Boko Haram has not even accepted the offer anyway.
There are so many contradictions in this whole thing, and that's the first problem we have with this government. It's not just this government, the immediate past government, and this one. It's been the same thing. There have been inconsistencies. There has been falsehood in dealing with this whole issue, and that's why it hasn't gone anywhere. As a matter of fact, it's getting worse. This government has tried to suppress the truth and to make things appear as if everything is okay, but everything is not okay. For instance, the terrorists have been said to have been defeated, to be degraded, to be technically defeated, and finally defeated. And yet we're talking about an amnesty. Why do we need to give anybody an amnesty who has been defeated? That's the first question they need to ask. If the insurgency war is over, like they said, why does anybody need any amnesty?
Well, but that might just be propaganda in propaganda, quite understandable now, whether we like it or not. The fact is that the insurgents are still active. We see them carry out attacks. We saw them carry out attacks just a few days ago. But
indeed,
the issue is, do you think this amnesty offer now, presents the country a window of opportunity to end the violence?
The issue is, the point we're making is the issues are not addressed honestly and sincerely, and so every other thing that seems to be done in that direction appears to be a charade. And that's where the problem is. Because there's nothing you're going to be doing if you're not going to be doing it honestly and sincerely and with openness and carrying the citizens along. It's not going to be sustainable. And so all those things are charades, because the question we asked still persists. If they have been defeated, why are we talking about amnesty? Those questions need to be answered, and so that we know. Yeah. So that's the point. That's the point. So even this, how do we even know? The question now is, how do we even know that what they're saying is a sincere thing we can rely on in the first place? And so that's what makes a simple issue generally complicated, because it shouldn't be a complicated thing. We would say, let's have the steps. Who are you? Have you radicalized them? Who are you giving amnesty, under what conditions, and how are you going to be following up? And those are the questions that should be answered while they're making the proposal in the first place. And so if there's a proposal, we already know what the risk is, we already know what the mitigation to the risk is. But we don't have any of those. So the proposal there seems like we're just going around in circles. Essentially, that's the point we're making.
But essentially, Bring Back Our Girls campaign group is not against amnesty as a means of ending this violence.
No, we're not against any means at all of ending the violence and of restoring peace in the Northeast and in Nigeria generally, and for people to go back to a normal life. If that is going to work, that will be fine, as long as it doesn't cause us more problems. Because right now, we're going in circles. The Maiduguri-Damboa road is still blocked. That was a road we celebrated that was open. Right now, ask anybody, it's still there. And then there's still military roadblocks. There's only one vehicle, vehicles being escorted. And then there are attacks every now and then everywhere in the area. And then there are also abductions that are going on that are not being announced or not being made public. And so we're still where we were, essentially. Just like it was shown and proven in the case of the abduction of the Dapchi girls, the same thing that happened with Chibok girls was able to happen with Dapchi girls. And so we're going round in circles. So anything that can end it is fine, as long as it is well thought out, it is well calculated, all the risks have been mitigated, and we do it with sincerity of purpose. That would be nice. The problem is that's what we don't have as it is now. In the next 10 days, 11 days or so, 10 days is going to be 4 years since our Chibok girls were abducted. 112 of them remain in captivity. Today is also 43 days since in captivity of Leah Sharibu. All of them have to be brought back. These ones, we know their names, we know their parents, we know their contacts, and they have to be brought back. It's not going to be fair to have our Chibok girls in captivity for 4 years, and for Leah Sharibu to spend one more day in captivity on account of her religious belief. It's actually not right.
And if talks, of course, could lead to their release, then all fine.
But it's the same thing. For 4 years, we have said that the government should decide what they're going to do. They can choose to negotiate, they can choose to use military force, they can choose to use a combination of military force and negotiations. What we will absolutely not accept is doing nothing and saying nothing about it. They have chosen to use negotiations. Our issue now is they should have a mitigation to that risk about negotiations, and to make sure that they bring everybody back. If they bring back our citizens, they're not doing them a favor. They're not doing anybody a favor. They're just doing what they ought to do. And nobody should be left in the hands of terrorists.
All right, thank you, Stacey Okume. Thank you for your time. We'll take a short break, and we'll be right back. On DEJI360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
The Constitution is constituent.
Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgment so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that panel.
DEJI360, providing clarity to issues.